Welcome back to our newest Mastering Mobile Marketing episode, where today I have the privilege of speaking to Arazu, who's our Associate Marketing Director here at Yodel Mobile. Obviously, we work very closely together, but would you mind just giving everyone a bit of an overview into yourself and your role at Yodel?
Sure. Thank you, Son. Really excited to be part of this. You're right. We do work closely together. So we make up the marketing team here at Yodel. I'm the associate marketing director, as Sonia mentioned. So I deal with general agency growth, whether that comes to kind of new business development, also kind of packaging our service offering, all through to all of our marketing activity from content and so on. So that kind of falls under our remit.
Nice. And today I've got you onto this episode to speak about what app marketing businesses should be asking their prospective partners when they're looking to work with an app marketing agency. And obviously, you're very much at the forefront in speaking to prospective clients and knowing the challenges that they face and what they really need to be asking to get true value out of those calls early on. So to start with, what would you say is the most important question app businesses should be asking first and foremost?
It's a good question. I think you can tell a lot by the style of business based on the kind of initial questions that they pose for a vendor, particularly for anyone looking for kind of campaign management or app growth kind of general support. I've had hundreds and hundreds of these initial conversations now in my time at Yodel. And I think based on some of these discussions, we've actually built out, I would say, a pretty good framework for what we think app success is. And really, I think a question kind of catered around the foundation of that is probably a good place to start for a lot of app businesses. And I think that question is, how do you kind of push towards sustainable growth for any app business? What are the activities you should be focusing on for that kind of long-term vision? And I think there are a lot of reasons as to why that is probably an important question.
Well, would you mind delving into those reasons for us and what the
Yeah.
optimal response would be?
Yeah, so I think, the app marketplace is super saturated. There's so much competition in pretty much every vertical. I think, particularly in the last year, we've seen a boost in mobile, kind of astronomical actually with lockdown. Engagement and also conversion on mobile has increased immensely. And with that in mind, being able to actually have the skill set, but also the strategy to execute that sustained growth, not just for a big bang launch, but for the long term to survive in the app marketplace. I think there are probably a lot of things that you should be focusing on. So I guess from us, a key foundational point to start is really understanding the marketplace. There are loads of tools out there to gather app intelligence, from an acquisition perspective through to ASO, through to engagement and retention metrics as well. So being able to really gather that information about what the competition is doing and build out the benchmarks, I think that's a really good place to start to really evaluate what you should be setting in terms of targets. And that goes on to the second point. I think, setting those realistic growth targets is probably one of the key things to help you to just actually build a roadmap for what this activity should be. What's the kind of key metric that you should be focusing on even? Is it just purely top of the funnel, which is something that we recommend not to do? Or should you have that kind of full funnel approach and really think about all the metrics that, would indicate, continuous and recurring revenue for your business? Additionally, I think, getting into the growth mindset is something that we are big, advocates for. And that really means just thinking about, growth in a very holistic way. So again, as I mentioned, when you're setting those targets, if you're looking at the full funnel, it could be, pushing subscriptions or other kind of down the funnel activity. Being able to pull together what you're doing from an engagement and retention perspective is really going to help you to achieve those targets. So yeah, I think, thinking about activity across the board is probably the best kind of position that you can take. And then finally, getting the right experience to help you on that journey, whether that's building an internal team of highly skilled app marketing specialists or turning to an agency or a consultancy like Yodel, for example. Being able to leverage that will help you on the way to actually achieving that sustained growth.
Nice. And I think you're very right. Sustainable growth is such a big part of what we do and is so important at the moment. I mean, it's crucial for businesses to obviously not only grow whilst they're working with an app marketing agency, but they need to think long-term picture as well. So how would businesses be able to ensure that this would be possible within the questions that they ask?
So I think maybe going off the last point about getting the right skill set, if we start there, really thinking about the finite amount of resource that you would have as a startup, let's say, for example, or a business who's a little bit more established looking to push out a mobile product. How I think the key thing to really think about is, where your time is going to go. And that again will be very much guided by the growth targets and metrics that you've set right at the start. But also really identifying where your gap in skill set is. Because you could have a team who are incredibly good at marketing on web, for example, they can build out really amazing creative strategies. But when it comes to ASO, there's a bit of a gap. Or when it comes to particular, I guess, CRM or like push campaigns to drive engagement, again, there's a bit of a gap. And being able to identify that, I think, will be key to then plug in or either eventually bring in someone into the team and grow the team when you have the available resource to do so, to actually have someone across kind of functions to really look after the app product and help it to grow in the long term. And I think, you can really lean on a partner for this as well. I think that's the great thing about looking to an agency. You usually have individuals who work across hundreds of apps, who have the experience, combined years experience of probably like 60 years. That's something that we say with our team. We have our heads of growth who have been doing this for 6-7 years plus in the app growth space, to be able to leverage that and inject those strategies into your own app model, I think would be, a really good thing for the long term. I also think don't rush would probably be a key bit of advice, I would say, for kind of long-term sustained growth, because that sustainable growth is really a steady process. It's a process where you go in phases. Even with a launch, it's not about, like I mentioned, a big bang launch. It's about validating the product before it hits the market. It's about slowly bringing users and testing and gathering feedback. And then even when it comes to acquisition, thinking about, increasing budget sustainably to bring in users at, good value for your cost and for your CPAs. And applying that kind of test and learn methodology, I think, again, in the long term, will do you good. So a lot of patience is probably needed. And I know that can be quite difficult, particularly for a lot of kind of funded startups who do have taken on investment and need to hit certain targets. But even so, being able to, balance the two, I think is key. Finally, I think making data-informed decisions. I think the mobile ecosystem is pretty good at doing this. I feel like a lot of mobile businesses are very kind of data-informed or data-first in their approach. So being able to have that data on hand through like a good MarTech tech stack, or leveraging your attribution, your analytics, or your marketing automation tool to pull that insight will be really key to drive your strategy. And then I think also use that data to define what's working for the app. What channels are working particularly well for bringing in those high value users. What creative set is actually bringing in the highly engaged users, for example, or what are your kind of, I guess, engagement strategies that are bringing the highest conversions. Use all that data to figure those things out and then push on and iterate.
That's all super, super important. But I do actually want to touch on a point you made there, obviously, about those funded companies that have investment and are required to hit targets. Obviously, for them, it might be important to scale a bit more quickly, or to have a much more large-scale approach to ensure that they can reach that next round of investment. So are there any questions that would reveal how an app marketing company would be able to help them to get results?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And, we've found ourselves in this position numerous times. We work with a lot of kind of funded startups to help them, enter into the market. And I think really fostering a transparent dialogue with your partner is key. Be open with them about what your targets are and why they're important. Then you can work together to create a plan to actually achieve those targets sustainably. I think also dig deep into the vendor to see what their experience is. Have they worked on the styles of product that you're looking to launch, for example, or that you're looking to grow? Have they seen kind of a track record of success in the vertical that you're in? Or for businesses in a kind of similar position, I think being able to see, I guess, some kind of proof that they'll be able to aid in the same way and that they have a track record, I think is probably something that will be very useful for any business to look into ahead of engaging a growth agency. um, I think asking the right questions as well is obviously what this whole video is about, but we've been asked a good few, I think, interesting questions that could be useful. And one of them was actually, what were our biggest failures as an agency with some of our previous clients? And I thought that was a really interesting question, because it helps to define what the mistakes are that have already been made by the agency that can be, taken on board, that can be improved upon for your business so that you don't have to make those same mistakes. But also, it also shows how reflective your partner can be on all the things that they've executed on in the past. And I think that's also a really kind of integral point, and something to really define and understand with your vendor ahead of engagement as well. And then finally, look at their team, look at their experience, who's going to be leading your project, who will be on the project, get to know them, build that kind of personable relationship. I think that's really important. Essentially, you want them to be an extension of your team. So being able to find that fit and understanding that someone highly experienced is going to be, manning your project, I think is probably something that a lot of businesses will find comfort in.
Nice. Thank you so much for joining me today, Arasu. I think there's a lot within that people will be able to take away and, help them gain more value as they speak to marketing agencies and help determine which ones are the right ones for them to be working with. Obviously, thank you for all those watching as well. If you have any questions on today's discussion, as always, we'll include a little link below to get in contact with the Yodel Mobile Growth team, or if you enjoyed this video, please do like, comment and subscribe.